Hello and welcome to El Pozo, the Primera RFEF show, the English-speaking podcast dedicated to the Spanish third tier. I'm your host, Nick Bell, this evening. I'm delighted to be once again joined by Liam Bambridge. And Liam, it's not been long since I've seen you. We only spoke on the weekend, didn't we?
Yeah, we certainly did. You usually have a week, don't we, between recordings, but we had a live show in the middle of it, which was great and fantastic to have so many people following us on that. Thank you so much for supporting what we were doing there. It's an idea we had a few weeks ago, and we decided to go for it. And although on the night the two teams that we were rooting for both had rather disappointing evenings, we still really enjoyed the experience, but it wouldn't quite have been the same if we'd been talking into the void. So thank you to so many of you for following us and for taking the time to show your appreciation afterwards. That was really great.
Yeah, lots and lots of fun, despite the results. But the drama of final day football was not lost on me with this live stream, Liam. Trying to keep up with all the different permutations and results, and we're going to go over a few of them now. But it was just a mad day in the end, and a great show. And again, I echo what Liam said there, and thank everybody for the engagement and for joining in. More importantly, as well, there was a fair number of you. Clearly, a growing support for the Spanish third tier. For all things Primera RFEF. So, yes, a bit of a different format to our usual shows. Obviously, the season has ended now, so we're not going to be doing too much to review because, obviously, as I've just mentioned, we did a live stream on the weekend looking at 20 games. But we're also obviously not looking ahead to too many games because we are moving into the playoffs now. So we're going to quickly recap what we saw this weekend, and then we're going to focus on those 8 teams which are going to be competing for a place in the Spanish Segunda next season. So to kick off with the Grupo Uno headlines, it was eventually Cultural Leonesa that got promoted. Absolute brilliant season for them. They've led from start to finish, from Jornada Uno to Jornada. I won't even pretend to know what the Spanish is for 38, Liam. But they didn't do it all their own way, did they? They left it to the very, very end, and eventually they've managed to get through there on the head-to-head, if I remember rightly, because they finished equal on points to Ponfe, didn't they, in the end?
They absolutely did, yeah, and they had a few wobbles, didn't they? I think we said before, didn't they? Was it 7 weeks to go? They were 8 points clear, or certainly it was a sizable gap. It looked like it was all over at the beginning of March, and then it suddenly wasn't. And fair play to the sides that are now in the playoffs for giving them a really hard chase down to try and make that more difficult for them to clinch it. But yeah, certainly deserving winners for me, as is usually the case with the champions of any league, and brilliant for them to be back in Segunda. It's only their second season in Segunda since 1975 to look forward to in the 25-26 campaign, and let's hope they do better than they did last time when they were instantly relegated. A team that isn't quite in the playoff picture but finished very close to it. And a fantastic story. I think you'd agree this one, Nick. Tarazona.
Yes, absolutely. So if you are not aware with the way the Copa del Rey works in Spain, there are places within the league structure where you can qualify for the Copa del Rey. And for Tarazona finishing 6th, this is quite big news, isn't it, Liam, for them? Because they are a team with one of the smallest budgets in the league. They're a bit old school in the way they approach things that way, maybe. But huge for them to be going into this, obviously, famous competition. And brilliant for them to finish 6th in the league as well, just missing out on the playoffs in Primera RFEF.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, yeah, I think the old school approach is based on the fact that from a town of about 13,000 people, aren't there? So there's not a lot of money out there. It has to be all about, the sum of the parts is what makes them what they are. They have quite a sort of. Did you remind me sometimes this season of Wimbledon back in the crazy gang days, and perhaps the old school to which you're referring. It's harder, isn't it, to build a team that plays wonderful passing, slick football on a very small budget, because players who can show all the tricks tend to be more expensive. But that's been what they've been about. They've been very well organised. They've had an excellent defensive record. They've been excellent at home, and of course, Adrian Fuentes has been a star signing for them last summer, and sadly will not be with them next season. I think we mentioned a couple of shows ago he's off to Cordoba, but I think he's ended up the top scorer in Grupo Uno, and a lot of that credit for how they've managed to go about their business so well, and as you say, qualify for the Copa del Rey based on league position, is down to the coach Juanma Barrero. But I thought it was a really nice touch this week. Did you see the press conference after this game, Nick?
I saw they all came in for like a big photo of appreciation with him, and it was a lot of the coaching staff as well, wasn't it? That were joining there. It looked like a real team effort to get them into this position as well, and well rewarded because, like you say, they'll be going into the hat for the Copa del Rey next season.
Yeah, I think the doctor was in as well, wasn't he? And rather than sort of take questions, I think Juan Marbellero spoke for a couple of minutes and just sort of said, look, it's brilliant. The players have been brilliant. I'm delighted with how to turn up. But this is the team. These are all the people that contribute. And we're massively grateful to everything they've all done. And I thought it was just a really nice touch and really good of him to sort of turn the focus on some of the unsung heroes, that have made that club so successful this particular season. They were pretty good last season as well, to be fair. I don't think many people expect to stay up in their first season in Primera F. Second season done even better. I'm not sure how they can push on from this, but a tremendous achievement. And let's hope that they have another decent season next time around. And some other newly promoted teams did very well as well, didn't they? One of them had a less than successful season, but three of them were really impressive across the 38 games, weren't they?
Yeah, you've got to give a huge shout out to especially Zamora being newly promoted and again almost finishing in the playoffs. Just a couple of bad results towards the end saw them then sort of drop away. But also with Orense and Baracaldo, are all finishing 9th, 10th, and 11th respectively. That is pretty good for clubs of their stature and their size, and obviously without the relevant experience at this level to finish above some teams which are much bigger than them, aren't they, Liam? So again, absolutely brilliant to see them thrive at this level. Some teams who unfortunately didn't, Liam, do you want to tell us about the sides who won't be with us next season?
Yeah, we knew we'd already lost Amora Bieta from this group, and we had also lost Gimnasia Segoviana, who I think were the fourth newly promoted side in Grupo Uno. They've just lasted one season at this level and now dropping back down to Segunda RF. And their coach, Ramses Gil, has left in the last couple of days, which is a shame. Obviously, time for a rebuild there, and we wish them the best of luck with that. As you know, I was there a couple of weekends ago. I was really impressed by the club and the reaction of supporters to that relegation. Tremendously positive approach to such a disappointing event in their club's history. And we did also lose a couple of Basque sides that we were really hoping to hang on to, didn't we, Nick?
Yes, obviously that loss to Ponferradina for Sestao River Club means that they slipped in at the expense of, I think in the end it was Osasuna Promesas who remained in the league, didn't they? And that last minute equaliser for them. But also Real Union, which it looked like a bit of a harder job for them to stay up, a bit less hope. But the fact they took 7 coaches of fans to the athletic club training ground to cheer them on, and they got themselves back into the game, and to lose it in that fashion, probably very heartbreaking from the team from Irun. And yes, obviously very sad to see two, absolutely brilliant clubs and historic clubs as well in their quarters, go down to Segunda RF. But I imagine that they'll go away and they'll rebuild and they'll have a great season next year. And hopefully they'll be within the promotion picture and rejoin us at the earliest opportunity, Liam, as well, won't they?
You would hope so, yeah, certainly. Two great clubs, and we wish them the best, as with Gimnastica, obviously, and then Morabieta, who we haven't mentioned in this show. Obviously, they've been down for a few weeks, but they've had a double relegation, so really disappointing times for them. And another Basque side, so 3 Basque sides relegated from Grupo Uno. Let's hope they all have a happier time next season. You did mention Osasuna Promesas surviving. What an amazing story that was. I mean, I don't think I've ever imagined a filial, a 95th minute equaliser from a filial would relegate another filial, and that's what happened, wasn't it? Barça Athletic going into injury time in Tajonar between Osasuna Promesas and Orense. They were staying up. They come from behind, I think, to go ahead against Unionistas. They were staying up, and then Diego Espejo, literally the last header of the game. The referee blew his whistle for full time as soon as they kicked off again after Diego Espejo had headed home a corner from the right, and that kept Osasuna Promesas in Primera F and sent Barça Athletic down. So that was quite amazing, wasn't it, really, in terms of, you talked about last day drama, so that was literally last minute drama, that one, wasn't it?
Oh, it was insane to see as well, in terms of up until the, I think it was about the 80th minute, we were looking at the way that the mini leagues were working and things like that, and the heads-to-heads. It was Sestao River that was staying up, but then that goal for Osasuna Promesas and for Unionistas meant that,
Barça Athletic against Unionistas, wasn't it? I think Barça Athletic were drawing, weren't they? And Osasuna Promesas were either drawing or losing. And so you say, Sestao were losing, but in that stage they were okay, weren't they? And then, you know, as you say, Barca let it went ahead. And at that point, I think they were saving themselves because they had the head-to-head on Sestao. And then Osasuna Promesa scored. And I think they must have had the head-to-head on Barca Athletic, did they? Because that's what kept them up in nothing, didn't it? You know, so quite incredible stuff, quite incredible tension there. And that's one thing that the head-to-head does bring, that goal difference doesn't bring, doesn't it? You know, it does mean that things can change in an instant, you know, from one situation to another. So yeah, excitement involving two filial sides. It's unusual that we would ever say that, isn't it? But yes, one of them survived and one of them didn't. How about the Group 2 headlines? Again, minus the playoff teams, because we'll focus on them a little bit later on in the show.
Yes, absolutely. Well, on the final day of the season, Ceuta, who had been on a 24-game unbeaten run, went to the Balearic Islands and thought, you know what, let's actually chuck that record in their bin, because they got hammered 5-0 by Paco Hermes' side. You know, really heavy defeat for them. But I suppose, Liam, they won't care because they've clearly, you know, excelled in this second half of the season, already secured promotion to the Spanish Segunda. A 5-0 loss when you've been unbeaten in 24 games and hold the league record. It's not a bad showing, is it, from them?
No, I suspect they must have got there a day early, do you think, Nick, and had a night out on the party island of Ibiza. They certainly played like that. I mean, I think they missed a penalty as well, Ibiza, and a couple of other decent chances. It literally could have been pretty much double figures. It was a truly appalling performance from the champions. Yeah, I'm sure they weren't overly bothered by it. As you said, me personally, I would have liked a nice round quarter century if I'd been one of their players, and that didn't happen. But 24 games is great, and as you say, they were already promoted. They've now still got to play the Champions playoff game over 2 legs, haven't they? I wonder if they're a little bit more up for that. I suspect not. They've got to play Cultural Leonesa. I think that's one of those games where both sides will probably be pretty hungover throughout the 2 legs. But yeah, disappointing end to what's been a great season for them. But as you say, realistically, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter at all. Apart from, I suppose, giving Ibiza a little bit of confidence going into those playoffs.
True. Did you see when they put the Champions playoff final, everyone to call it, on at?
I haven't. Is it today or tomorrow? Is it the same time as the Conference League final or something ridiculous?
It's the same time as the Champions League final. As far as planning for the Primera RFEF is concerned here, if I'm being honest with you, if you want to put your product out there, you take the 2 best teams, Ceuta, who are unbeaten in 24 games as they were, and Cultural Leonesa, who have led the league from day dot. You're getting them together to play a game. It's your showpiece. Why would you put it on at the same time as the Champions League final? That's just daft, isn't it? But
absolutely extraordinary.
Mind boggles.
I didn't notice that. I know it's 2 legs. I know the first leg, and that's how bothered I am about it. I'm not even sure if the first leg is tonight or tomorrow night. But yeah, that's incredible that they would do that on Saturday night. Quite extraordinary, as you say. It almost says to you, doesn't it? They don't even care about it. They're kind of basically accepting that no one's going to watch it. So just get it out of the way, get it done with, which begs the question why I even bother with it in the first place. I think it's a bit of a pointless occasion. I don't think anyone cares who the eventual Primera Federación champions are. I'm sure both sets of players would rather not bother and just watch the Champions League final, I imagine. But yeah, I didn't spot that at all. But yeah, ridiculous. We should have a little look down the bottom. We focused obviously a lot down the bottom, well, certainly I did, on disappointment, but of Grupo DOS, a team that we lost, which we'll talk about in a minute. But, you know, we do need to mention Marbella as well, who saved themselves, and especially Carlos de Lerma, don't we?
We really do. And, you know, he's done a fantastic job of keeping, you know, his side in the league. At one point, we were maybe considering them to be a bit dead and buried, you know, down there with the likes of with Intercity, etc. But he's really pulled them out there. You know, 5 wins and a draw in the last 9 games. And, you know, he went into that final match. You know, Marbella were bottom of that mini league with Atlético Santiago and Yeclano Deportivo, knowing that basically we have to bet the results above us. And by doing so, I mean, we need to win this game against Antequera. And they went and controlled it really early, didn't they? They went and got job done pretty quickly in that. And obviously in Jose Calejon's final match, it's a fitting end to his football career that he's not got that relegation on his CV as well. A great game by all accounts as well.
Yeah, quite helpful assist from the Antequera player to give Callejon his goal. I'm not suggesting he meant it, but he could have planned it much better, could he really? And I think actually Antequera missed a great chance at 0-0. I'm not sure how things would have gone if that had gone in. But yeah, as much as it disappointed me because Marbella profited at the expense of a team that with all due honesty, I would rather have stayed up with the two of them. Tremendous for Cajon to finish on a high with a goal and not getting relegated. And we also had Atletico San Luqueño surviving, didn't we? And again, a bit of a new coach bounce, but over a much shorter period of time.
Yeah, they really did. And, in this game, for them to come from behind at the Jose Rico Perez, we did joke whether Hercules would be on the beach. Well, they certainly weren't in the first half, but, to come from behind and win in an emphatic fashion that they did, again, securing their own future. They had kind of a similar approach where they just knew a win would mean they would survive. And again, not a club I'm sad to see stay up either, because I don't mind Atletico San Luqueño. They are a club that is punching well above their weight, and they've been at this level for a few seasons now, and they'll continue to do so. Unfortunately, with those results, though, Liam, it meant that we lost one of our favoured sides. It's fair to say we've not been shy about signposting this, but really as well, this is I don't want to say it's their own fault. That's not what I'm saying at all. But they knew what they had to do. They were in control for a large portion of that game, especially the first half. But that second half against Intercities really has basically what has torpedoed Yeclano Deportivo's season, and ultimately seen them, relegated below Atletico San Luqueño and Marbella.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right about that. It's easy to get sort of caught up in the whole kind of, we've been hard done by referees. They certainly have on a number of occasions. Some of the penalties given, some of the goals disallowed, inexplicable. But it came to the final game of the season. They were 1-0 up at half time against a team that, although they played suspiciously well in the second half, they were down and they did not play well. Yeclano Deportivo, the second half, they were poor and they invited pressure onto themselves. And we know that Intercity got some very decent players within their ranks. And so, yes, they have only themselves to blame. And much as it hugely disappoints me to see them slip out of this division and go back to Segunda RF, they will have to take some of the responsibility for that as a collective. And I just hope that as many of those players who have, for me, shown themselves to be more than capable of doing a great job at this level, I hope they do hang around. But the trouble is, because they have shown that ability, I suspect a lot of players will be looking to stay in Primera RFEF, and there'll be clubs out there who'll be willing to give them the opportunity to do so. And we know that Yeclano Deportivo was not the richest club, even Segunda RF. There's talk about the coach going to Águilas, who are just another side in Segunda RF, but can probably pay more money and it probably got a bigger player budget, etc. So it does feel like they might have to have a bit of a rebuild this summer, and I hope that goes well. And the same with Alcoyano, of course, who we've lost, haven't we? And that was a great shame. We had this new coach, Luis Miguel Garrido, come in and do a decent job, didn't he? Even though he wasn't allowed to be put on the team sheet as the coach, didn't have the qualifications. I thought that, they had no chance when he came in, and it just seemed like they were playing out time. And yet he lost one of his last 5 games, but it wasn't enough, was it?
No, it wasn't. And again, we look at these clubs who, they are probably punching above their weight ever so slightly. These are small town clubs, going up against, some big established clubs at this level that have played a lot higher as well. So it is sad when you do lose them, but they gave everything that they needed to take any relegation to the final day of the season is usually, merit enough to get a decent pat on the back and say unlucky, get your head together and go again next season. And both these clubs, I think, will definitely do that. There'll be a rebuild required. Same with Fuenlabrada as well. Obviously, we've not spoken about them, but obviously they were also relegated on the final day of the season. They actually finished in that final relegation spot with a huge win against Recreativo de Huelva, who were already relegated. But 4 goals from again, his name's going to elude me now. I'm sure I wrote it down here somewhere, but yeah, the fact that they managed to get that win was absolutely incredible, wasn't it, Liam? But obviously all in vain because they go down too.
Yeah, and a side that were in Segunda as recently as the 21-22 season, but certainly punching well above their weight at that level. And even Primera RF, yeah, possibly they're probably a mid-table Primera RF side for me in terms of size and budget. And yeah, they just had a really poor run in the season and couldn't turn it around. Brought in a triumvirate, didn't they, with a couple of games to go, but I think lost the first 2 games, and so that it was out of their hands by the last day of the season, and they won, as you say, well, but it was not enough to save them because both Marbella and Atletico Sanluqueño won as well. So not their ending to the season that they planned when they made that change, of course, but they've had plenty of experience, as I say, at Segunda and also a couple of seasons at Primera RF, so they will be a strong team. I imagine in Grupo 5 of Segunda RF next season, and we'll look to bounce straight back, I guess.
Yeah, I was actually looking at our credits when this, like our titles on the video, and I don't know if we maybe curse people because we've got a Fuenlabrada player in there, we've got a Recreativa de Huelva player in there, we've got a Sestao or Real Union. I don't know if we've been the kiss of death a little bit, Liam, with that, but that means we're going to have to rework all that for the summer.
We might need
to
might to invite clubs to pay us a bit of money not to put their players in the credits in future, might we?
I'd say
for 25-26 season.
Don't touch us. But yeah, obviously those are the sides that are going to go into the Segunda RF for next season. Focusing on the teams that want to be elevated into the Segunda, we now move on to the playoff games. So just a quick reminder that no side can play another team from the same group as them. So for example, Nastic Tarragona wouldn't be able to play Ponferradina. In this situation, because we'll only have one automatic spot, it is second, who will then play fifth, and third, who play fourth, etc., across the leagues. After 120 minutes, if the teams are level in the second leg, we don't have penalties. And basically, it's the team who finish higher up in the league have the advantage going to this game. So in theory, you could draw the first leg 0-0, you could finish the 120 minutes of the second leg 0-0, and whoever finished higher is going through on that merit, basically, Liam, which I think's fun, Liam. It's a bit of added jeopardy. It's kind of like a mini head-to-head, I suppose, that they've incorporated into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing, and we should mention this point that they can't meet each other from the same group in the quarterfinals, but after that they can, can't they? You could be in a situation where, in theory, I suppose you could have all four sides from one group or going through, couldn't you? And then obviously it would be impossible for them to avoid each other in the semi-finals. But yeah, initially they're kept apart, and yeah, I agree with you. I don't like penalties, Nick. I really don't, especially not with so much at stake here. I know it's great tension and great viewing for the neutral, but horrible for the players, horrible for the fans of the losing team. Not for me at all. So I think this is fair. I think it's a fair way of doing it, and everyone knows where they stand at the start of the two legs, and it's up to you to, I don't think too many play for the draw over the 210 minutes, do they, on the whole? They've just got that in the back of their minds. I'm sure by extra time in the second game, they're thinking about it a bit more, but I'm sure they don't start off the whole tie with that thought in the back of their mind. So I don't think it leads to too much negativity in the first leg, at least. And the second leg, yeah, as it goes on, maybe, but I still think it's a fair way to decide it. So we'll start with I think the first game chronologically is 6:30 p.m. local time on Saturday evening, isn't it, Nick? And that is between Gimnàstic de Tarragona, who finished fifth in Grupo 1, and Real Murcia, who finished second in Grupo 2. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about Gimnàstic de Tarragona, one of your favourite sides in Primera RF, Nick?
Yes, I don't know if I'm maybe the person that can get through this without smiling, because obviously Nastic de Tarragona were Malaga's competitors last season in the playoffs, and obviously that 122nd minute heartbreak for them where Antonito scored meant that they were not promoted last season, but they're here again, squeezing in fifth place, like you said. They have been in Segunda as recently as the 2018-2019 season, but I've spent more seasons at that level in the 21st century than anywhere else, basically. They were very close to returning last season, as I've already mentioned, with Antonito's 122nd minute goal keeping Malaga up. However, there has been some controversy since then about the referees and stuff like that, but I think this time, Liam, they'll be desperate to go one more under this new coach, and I think they'll be looking at that final win of the season, giving them that bit of momentum to maybe take that extra step. But they're coming up against Real Murcia. Can you tell me a little bit about them?
Yeah, I mean, I think they are now, aren't they? With the promotion, as you say, Malaga last year, and the promotion of Deportivo La Coruña as well. They are the biggest club for me by some distance in terms of their massa social, in terms of the number of season ticket holders they've got, and the stadium. We saw nearly 30,000 in there for the game against Ceuta, didn't we, early on this season? And yeah, they feel like a Segunda club, at least. I think their president thinks that they would more than hold their own in terms of support base in La Liga, and he's probably not far wrong, but they haven't been anywhere near La Liga for a long time. In fact, they haven't even been in Segunda since I think the end of the 2013-14 season. They even slipped as low as Segunda RF in the 21-22 season. I think the biggest problem for them, of course, is going to be expectation. The sense around that club at the moment is they're not really happy, the supporters, a lot of them, with how the season has gone, and yet they finished second, Nick. I mean, let's go a little bit easy on them here. I mean, there is huge expectation of them to do well and play well and entertain, and maybe they've been a little bit obdurate at times, but they have finished second in the league behind a team that was unbeaten for 24 games. So it seems a little bit harsh to be too critical of what they've achieved so far.
Yeah, I was going to say there's expectation, but I don't think anyone was catching the juggernaut that was Ceuta in that second half of the season, to be fair worthy. So I think finishing second is quite an accomplishment in itself. And yeah, like I say, having a club like Real Murcia and a stadium like the Nueva Condomina in Segunda wouldn't be a bad look, would it, Liam? Especially, but just to summarise sort of the teams, and so from a Nastich perspective, we look at them. They've been in and around the playoffs all season. They've got a superb home form, the best in division, with just 2 defeats in 19, of which 12 of them have been wins. But they are just absolutely diabolic on the road. 4 wins away all season, and basically that's what ultimately cost Danny Vidal his job. Obviously, the very popular manager was relieved with just 2 games to go, and it's been replaced by Luis Cesar Sampedro, and he is the person who took them up to Segunda at the last time of asking. So
La Liga, all the way to the top. I think it's the only season they've spent in La Liga. So, remarkable that he did that over 20 years ago, I think. Yeah. So he's very fondly remembered, I suppose, although he didn't last long from what I remember in La Liga. I think he was gone by about November. So they didn't appreciate his achievement for very long before they got rid of him. But you can see, I suppose, why they might have brought him back in at this stage. But yeah, it felt harsh, didn't it, getting rid of Danny Vidal at that stage? And I think a lot of the fans were disappointed with that decision. But you know what? If Luis Cesar Sampedro takes them up to Segunda, I'm sure they will quickly forget about that.
Yeah, I think all will be forgiven if he manages to get this done. And again, looking at that form going into the games he done, 1 win, 1 draw, momentum maybe building there. And like you say, they've got the first leg at the Nuevo Estadio Costa Dorada. So again, look at some of the key players that they've got. They've got obviously Roberto Torres, who is an Osasuna legend. He spent 15 seasons in Pamplona before a brief spell in, I think it was Iran, weirdly, but he's back on patch now in Spain, and he's a very efficient midfielder, a very classy football player, especially obviously as he's getting to his advancing years, but still very important for the way that Nastich play. They've got Pablo Fernandez and Antonin, both have reached double figures for goal scoring this season, and they've also got Victor Naro, who is a key attacking threat for them as well. 6 goals and 9 assists this season for the winger there. Absolutely brilliant stuff from them, and they'll be wanting to make that home fortress count for them in this first leg, won't they, Liam?
Very much so. I think it's sold out already, isn't it? They did a deal where they think you could buy up to 4 tickets the season ticket holders were offered the chance to buy up to 4 tickets for €5 each, and the tickets have gone, unsurprisingly, very quickly. It's not a massive stadium, so that should be a fantastic atmosphere there. I think actually Murcia are doing it by ballot, which I think is quite a nice way of doing it. A lot of fuss in the past there's been limited tickets available. There's a lot of talk, hasn't there, of sort of various people getting preferential treatment. I think they've just said, look, if you want a ticket, put your name in the hat, and we'll hopefully, you hope. I mean, it could be difficult in terms of transport ranges and stuff, but I think it's the only fair way to do it, really, when you've got far too many people wanting tickets for them. Tickets are available. I think that's really the only conclusion you could come to. And I suppose, yeah, you said they're brilliant at home, Gimnastic de Tarragona, but we have to also bear in mind how good Real Murcia are away from home, don't we?
Yeah, we really do. And this season, they've got the best defensive record in the division, and that'll be, a key fact for them. Coming up against sides like, Nastich de Tarragona, 10 wins on the road as well, which sort of like puts them middle of the road for, the table, but still getting double figures for results away from home is not to be shaken at all, have they? Fran Fernandez has previously got experience in this sort of scenario as well. He's taken Alcorcon up to Segunda in the past. However, there has been, as you've alluded to, a lot of criticisms around their performances as of late. Will they feel that, Liam? Do you think maybe will that added pressure maybe come into factor with Real Murcia in the playoffs?
I think it's a really tough one to call because I think there's quite a lot of expectation around Gimnàstic de Tarragona as well, isn't there? I mean, I feel like there's a lot of fans feel that, as I said, Gimnàstic de Tarragona spent more seasons in Segunda than they have in the third tier of Spanish football in the last 25 years. So ultimately, they feel that they should be at the next level. So it's a question of which set of players cope better with the pressure. I think it's pressure on both of them. I think the pressure is greater for the Real Murcia players. But ultimately, what will play into their hands, I think you said that their record on the road is sort of mid-table. It's not at all. It's the best record in the division. It's the home form that's the issue. And isn't that interesting that the home form is where they're struggling? Because of that pressure, I think away from home, they find it a little bit easier because there aren't people baying for them to score, and play fantastic football. At home, more difficult. So a lot, I suppose, depends on this first leg and how well they cope with that, and can they then cope with the undoubted pressure of probably a full house back at the Nueva Condomina, willing them on, but at the same time probably not having a lot of patience if it isn't going how they feel it should be going. Who are their key players? Nick, that you've sort of picked out as people who might be able to cope with that pressure and might be key contributors in this two-legged quarterfinal?
Well, one person who I know has been featured a lot in our teams of the week since we launched those out, Liam, is Esteban Savic. A very experienced, I think he's Croatian/Argentinian, but a strong centre back nonetheless. And he's played at higher levels before as well with Rayo Vallecano in La Liga, but also in Segunda with Burgos as well. So he's a really smart Rolls Royce of a footballer for this level, and again clearly where Real Murcia can attract players of a certain standard as well. Pedro Leon, I think, needs no introduction. He's a legend in Spanish football, even more experienced now in his prime at 38. Liam, are we saying 38? Are we saying 38 is experienced now? That's nearly my age.
But veteran, yeah, very much so. Especially position he's playing, he plays as kind of winger, doesn't he? He's and I'm not saying he's necessarily got the pace yet when he was 23, for instance, but yeah, he is kind of a wide player on the whole, isn't he? He's nippy to a certain extent anyway, and tricky and skillful. You tend to associate 38-year-olds with sort of centre halves or keepers, don't you? Or maybe an old head up front, but not usually wide players in midfield. But yeah, he's had a great career, hasn't he? As has Juan Carlos Real, to be fair. He's another attacking midfield. He's 34. I think he's had nearly 250 games in Segunda. He was at Cartagena, I think, last season. So, they've got some really, really experienced players who have played on the big stage, will be used to the occasion, and will hopefully cope with this well in terms of the expectations of the fans. And then somebody who's much younger, David Flacus Bosic, who's only just come in. I think he's Montenegrin, is he? Certainly from one of those states in that part of the world, one of those countries, I should say. He's on loan from Castellón. He started the season in Castellón. Probably felt that he maybe needed first come across to Spanish football. Felt he perhaps needed a little bit more time, a little bit lower level, and so joined Real Murcia in the winter transfer window, I think, and scored 7 in 17. Looks like a really good player at this level, and maybe the experience he's getting at this level will make him a decent Segunda player. When he goes back to Castellón, or maybe if Real Murcia get up, he'll be tempted to stay there, and perhaps Castellón prepared to let him stay there. We'll see anyway. But before we worry about next season, we've got to decide who we think is going to win this one, Nick. And what's who are you going for out of these two?
Well, the first comment I'll make is to the people who are saying that 38 and 34 are experienced. The first 4 yards are in your head. That's my tactical advice to you out there if you're listening. Certainly not in mine, that is. But I don't know about this, Liam, because as we've said here, you've got one team which is great at home, one team which is great away. The first leg is Nastic at home and Real Murcia away. So the first leg is going to be brilliant. The second leg sounds like it's going to be shite. Do you know what I mean? So I think maybe whoever can get the better of the first leg is probably going to win this one, if I'm being perfectly honest. And dare I say, I think it's probably going to be Nastic. I'm maybe going to put my hat on the home side, going with a bit of an emphatic home win to begin with.
The thing with this, of course, Nick, isn't it? Sometimes playoffs are played sort of midweek and then the following weekend. But these games are a week apart, aren't they? So we can come back in a week now and go, you still think that? First leg result, Gimnàstic de Tarragona 0, Real Murcia 3. So you're still back in Gimnàstic at this point. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the first thing is absolutely crucial. I think if Gimnàstic can get any sort of lead, certainly as much as a 2-goal lead, I think it'd be very hard for Murcia in return leg with that pressure that we've alluded to. But we shall see. We'll certainly discuss it, as I say, in 7 days' time and see if we're any clearer in our own mind. It's going to be a close one to call, isn't it, I think? But yeah, I think I'd probably overall give Gymnastic just the edge going into this one. Game 2. Antequera is, again, just look at this chronologically. I think the next game is on Saturday evening, isn't it? Again, after that one, thankfully, they haven't put the games at the same time, which I think is great because we can potentially watch, all 4 games in these quarterfinals, both legs. Antequera, 5th in Group 2. Grupo dos, I should say, against Ponferradina, 2nd in Grupo 1. Now, I'm aware that many people listening to the show may know a lot about Antequera already, but if you are perhaps just tuning in, become particularly interested in Primera RFEF because you're wondering who might come and join you as a Segunda fan next season in 25-26, and we are going to give a little bit more of a background, aren't we, as we have done already with those 2 sides in terms of their history and a bit more about these clubs. So tell us a bit more about Antequera, Nick, for those who perhaps aren't really aware where they are and what they've been up to since they formed.
Yes, so Antequera, very much from I'll say my ends, Liam, if that's okay. Obviously, being a Malaga fan first and foremost, and usually found in the Costa del Sol, but they are just a short drive north of Malaga. Beautiful, those traditional, white building towns you see on the drive to Cordoba. They were only formed in 1992, so again, a club that is very much in its infancy. I'm older than this football club. That's not a good sentence for me to say. But this second season in the 3rd tier of Spanish football has been absolutely brilliant for them. I don't think anyone would have expected Antequera to have been within the playoff picture so far. Their fortunes have really changed since a certain former Burnley owner came in as owner last year in February, and that is Mike Garlick. If anyone it remembers him from Burnley's first promotion to the Premier League, he made himself quite a character amongst the riches of the top table. They were close to the playoffs at the end of last season, but now they're going to be involved after this brilliant first half they've had. They've not had the best second half of the season. I think that is sort of, encapsulated the fact that they were competing for the top spot for such a long period of time, and now they finished 5th. There's an argument to say as well that really, should they have lost to Marbella at the weekend, where they could have finished 4th and got themselves maybe a bit more of a preferable game against Real Sociedad B, for example. But this is a team that specialises, and I'll beg my pardon here, remontadas. Is that correct? Is my Spanish?
Absolutely perfect, Nick. Perfect. Yeah. What are remontadas for the non-Spanish speakers?
They are comebacks, I believe, are they? Or teams who come from behind to win. And perhaps the most standout one of that was a 2-2 draw against theie Atletico when they were 2-0 down in injury time recently and came back to draw 2-2. So, obviously a great story, Liam, isn't it, really? To have a team of this size with this backstory, with a young manager and an exciting owner within the playoff mix.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that 2-2 draw that you mentioned there was crucial because they really had hit the wall a bit, hadn't they? I think they overall only won 3 of the last 10. They were conceding a lot of goals. And that game looked like it was going against them. I think Sevilla Atletico were pushing to get into the playoffs, weren't they? Were just outside them. And I think that they'd lost that game. They might well not be in the playoffs now, but they are. And they've got some great players in there. There's some real mix, haven't there? I mean, I love Jonathan Biabiani, who's 37 years old. Obviously, that's not old, as you've just said, Nick, and not even that experience, really. But, you've got to remember, Biabiani once, I think Sampdoria once paid into 7 million euros to Jonathan Biabiani. He has a significant number of years that he spent in Serie A. He arrived in Spain in 2020 with, I think, San Fernando is out there, and I think they were probably Primera RFEF at that stage. I think they then dropped down into Segunda RFEF, and now he's come to Antequera. He's got 12 goal involvements, 6 goals and 6 assists from sort of right back stroke right midfield. You've got Chema Núñez in there, who's got 12 assists, which I think is the most in Primera RFEF, equal joint top, I think, with another player who we'll mention later. And then you've got Luis Gutiérrez, who I think is great. He either scores or he gets booked, or sometimes he does both. He's got, I think, 7 goals, which I think makes him the top scorer for Antequera, joint top scorer. And he's also got 15 yellow cards. I mean, that's a hell of a rate to go at, isn't it? In 38 games, 15 yellow cards. So yeah, he's a crucial player in their midfield, great free kick taker, and all players who could certainly make an impact in this game against Ponferradina. Tell us a bit more about Ponferradina's recent history, Nick.
I will. I think. I wonder if Jonathan Bibiani might end up back at Sampdoria now that they're in Serie A. He's got form for doing that, hasn't he? Of flirting back and forth type thing. But yeah, he's obviously been brilliant to watch this season as well. A very cultured head on him, and a very good footballer for this level too. Ponferradina, a team who are certainly a lot more accustomed to being in Segunda. You know, they've been in there, plenty of times in the last 10 years, and we were close to making it last season in the playoffs as well. And they've also been close to making it up to La Liga a couple of times as well. They finished fifth last season in Grupo Uno, but were knocked out in the playoffs by Cordoba, who've obviously gone on to have a brilliant season in Segunda. And they were so close this season to catching Cultural Leonesa, weren't they, Liam? To miss out on automatic promotion on the head-to-head must be a little bit heartbreaking when you've gone away and you've got the job done. But these are the fine margins that we're talking about, aren't they? So, yeah, they will be up for this, weren't they?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, they were, I think, the joint best team in the Segunda Vuelta in Grupo Uno. I'm going to be about athletic, tremendous stuff. I think they're about 12 or 13 points behind Cultural Leonesa at one point. And as you say, they'll eventually lost out on goal average, literally by beating Cultural Leonesa by one fewer goal than Cultural Leonesa beat them in the first game at the Reino de Leon. That's all it was between them and being promoted. So, tremendous stuff from them. And I think sometimes the teams miss out by that little, then it can work against them, can't it? But I think in this case, I feel like they gave them such a good battle right to the very end that I think they come into it in pretty good shape. As I say, the second half of the season, they've been the joint best team in the division, and that's great. And they've got some terrific players, haven't they? You always remind me, don't you? One of the first things you remember about us recording this show, one of the first shows we recorded, which seems like a lifetime ago, but it's actually only a couple of months ago, was Andres Prieto's swimming cap. I remember that's certainly interesting. Yeah, an interesting moment in our first episode, I think it was, wasn't it? But he's also an extremely good keeper. It was a slightly bizarre moment, but also he's a very, very good keeper. 14 clean sheets this season in Primera RFEF for him. Amazingly, when I started to dig a bit deeper about Andres Prieto early on this season, he actually once lined up for Birmingham City in an FA Cup tie against Manchester City at the Etihad, but unfortunately it was during the COVID pandemic in January 2021. So the game was played behind closed doors. He lined up against the likes of De Bruyne and Gabriel Jesus and Mahrez, and like a real star-studded team that City put out that day in the FA Cup. But hardly anybody was allowed to watch it, which would be a shame. I think he only played 2 games for Birmingham. He was the backup keeper, played a couple of cup games, and he has been crucial for 2 seasons running now with Ponferradina. And he's also, importantly, perhaps had that Primera RFEF playoff experience gone well for him. He was a backup keeper, I think, at Alcorcon the season before that, and they went up in, although he wasn't massively involved in that, he would have been around the team that was successful in this stage of the season, the playoff knockout stage of the Primera RFEF campaign, and so maybe that'll serve him in good stead as well. A couple of other players have done really well in the Segunda Vuelta, aren't they, Nick?
Yes, there has been. Yerik Cabanzon. He's been, really, really good as a winger. Very, very influential, and has had a fantastic second half of the season as well. He's Racing de Santander youth product, and he's still owned by them, but he's been on loan with Ponfe for a year and a half now, which again is not unusual, but obviously he's become a bit of a fan favourite, El Torolin, as well. So it'd be interesting to see what happens to him next season, depending where Ponfe finish up. And the one player I was keeping my eye on Saturday evening was Alvaro Bustos. Obviously, he scored in that game against Cultural Leonesa. He popped up against Sestao River Club as well, unfortunately, this weekend. But 10 goals from the wing. He's the top goal scorer in this team. Absolutely brilliant for him after a slow start to life at Ponfe as well, wasn't he? But they've come bang on form coming into the playoffs, haven't they?
Very much so, yeah. I think he's had 3 in his last 3, hasn't he? So he's in a really good place right now. And we haven't even mentioned, of course, Alex Costa, who's another young forward, one of those who you see on TV, and I saw him in the game at Tarragona between Gimnastic de Tarragona and Ponferrada. He's huge. He's absolutely huge. He's like about 6'4", and still very, very young prospect. I think he's only about 20, but we haven't even mentioned him, and I think he's got 9 goals or something. So they've got a lot of options going forward. They've got a few seasoned heads at the back, and they've got an excellent keeper. So I have to say, I don't know about you, Nate, but I make them pretty strong favourites in this one. I know Antequera be delighted to be there and won't just be there to make up the numbers. And perhaps the pressure's off on them now after that second half of the season when they looked like they were competing right at the top and then almost slipped out. Maybe now it's the pressure's off them and they can just go out and relax and play the best football that they can. But I have to say, I feel like Ponfe strong favourites in this one.
Yeah, I don't think there's any two doubts about that in terms of how efficient Ponfe have been in this season as well, and how brilliant they are with the players we've discussed. However, you've just hit the nail on the head for me there, and the same with the other playoff finals. Pressure will come into it, and teams can lose their head. Antequera probably thinking, well, we didn't plan to be here. We're going to enjoy ourselves and play our football right, and maybe they can pop up with a bit of result. I think, for me, out of the fixtures we're talking about, this could be one of the surprise ones for me. I think a lot of it will come down to that second leg up in Ponferrada and who comes out best there, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yeah, it could be tight after the first one, couldn't we? I don't necessarily expect either side to win the first leg. And then second leg, it just depends what Antequera can do. Probably soak up pressure and hit on the break. As I say, they've not been great defensively in the second half of the season, but they do have players that can turn it on. And they've got Nbiabiani, they've got a player who's got a little bit of X factor about him for me, even though he's nearing the end of his career. He's a tremendous player and he could produce something out of nothing, I think. So we'll see. But I think Ponfe are deservedly favourites for this one. Third quarter final, Andorra, fourth in Grupo 1 versus Ibiza, third in Grupo 2. Do you want to talk us through a little bit of the recent history with Andorra?
Yes, this is a fixture. This is the flashy fixture I'm going to call here, Liam. Isn't it? Like I say, these are two quite nice, shiny kids on the block type teams, and certainly Andorra, since being bought by Gerard Piqué back in 2018, have had relative success since he's took over there. Obviously, they were promoted up to Segunda very, very recently under Sarabia, who's obviously doing wonderful things at Elche. And, it was a surprise to see them come back down last season, but they've managed to, recoup, reoperate, and they've been in and around, that playoff chasing pack all season. And I think they just lost momentum at the wrong time, didn't they, Liam? Because they were within the slightest shout of finishing top. But like with any side at the top here, they are fantastically funded and they've got a fantastic squad as well, with one of the most fiercest strike forces in the league, don't they, Liam?
Very much so, yeah. I think there was that game, wasn't it, against Sestao River Club, that they were winning 1-0 and eventually lost 2-1. That was literally the penultimate week of the season. If they'd won that game, they would have been still very much in the mix. They just faltered right in the final hurdle, so to speak. And yeah, their front two are tremendous, aren't they? I think there's no doubt that they're the best strike pairing in Primera Federación. Manu Nieto, Lautaro de León. They've got 25 goals between them, 13 for Nieto, 12 for De Leon. I think De Leon's Uruguayan, as he came through the academy system at Ceuta de Vigo. He played in Segunda for Mirandés last season, and Nieto's also played in Segunda for Andorra, actually, and also for Elche. And crucially as well, he was part of the Eldense side, who I think got promoted by the playoffs, the Primera Federación playoffs 2 summers ago. So he's, again, another one of these players. He's been there and done it at this level in the playoffs. So he is going to be a key player for them, as is De Leon. And that's all about keeping those two quiet, isn't it, really, as to how they get on. And then I hesitate to say an experienced campaigner, as you've just said, that anybody over 32 is not necessarily experienced. But I think Alvaro Peña is about 33. And he is, for me, a battle-hardened midfielder, shall we say? Then tell us a bit more about him. His recent past is quite interesting, isn't it? Again, one of those who was in Amorebieta a couple of seasons ago and then disappeared abroad, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he ended up in the Netherlands, didn't he? And he was in the Eredivisie and played 20 odd games up there and in the Dutch top flight before heading for Andorra this summer. But yeah, again, it's that pull factor for Andorra, isn't it, which really helps them. The finances are one thing, but I think maybe the allure of the project sometimes can be quite convincing too, because they are a unique story, so to say, aren't they, Liam? But it'll be very interesting to see whether they can bounce back to Segunda at the first time of asking. But they've got to come up against Ibiza, who are a bit of a different kettle of fish, is the way I'm going to describe them, Liam, aren't they? Because they're a very strange club.
Well, I don't know if they are really, are they? Because you said, didn't you, that both of these teams are kind of slightly shiny toys, aren't they, really? Obviously, Andorra for Piqué, and let's not forget as well, you mentioned about the pull of the Principality. I don't think they pay tax there, do they, Nick? So that's quite a big pull as well. You just played 20 games in the Dutch top flight for Almeria City, and then suddenly you want to come home to Spain, and somebody says, you know what? I give you the same money as you're getting in the Eredivisie, and you won't pay tax on it. But so, yeah, that's quite handy. But yeah, I think the thing with, as I say, with Ibiza, Amadeo Salvo, this team is essentially founded in 2015. And there was another Ibiza side on the island, Udi Ibiza, this one we're talking about here. I think they did follow on in the footsteps of a club that went bust, but 4 or 5 years afterwards, it wasn't an immediate changeover. So I think we have to regard them as a brand new team. He had been president at Valencia. Amadeo Salvo is a businessman with some quite good business ventures. Clearly, he's made a lot of money out of his business career. I think the thing that sticks in my throat with both of these sides, Nick, is that they've both bought a promotion, which I find unpleasant. It's out there in Spanish football. Gerard Piqué bought a promotion for Andorra. I'm sure Paul McGarren can tell you more about that. I think it was about 2019, wasn't it? Just after he came in to power there and bought the club in December 2018. That following summer, they got promoted, but then he managed to get them a double promotion because he bought a place off a team that was perhaps rather deprived of that place under rather dubious circumstances. And then same with Amadeo Salvo. He, at the end of I think was it the previous season, 2018, I think he bought a promotion to what was then Segunda B. And then, as you say, Nisa de Andorra, didn't you? But Ibiza had done the same. They went up to Segunda. So both these sides have been in Segunda in the last 2 or 3 seasons. And in fact, Ibiza spent a couple of seasons there, as did Andorra, and then got relegated down again. They've been one more season in Primera RFEF than Andorra. The 2 sides have both spent 2 seasons in Segunda, but not the same 2 seasons. And then they did all right last year, didn't they? Ibiza, they finished 4th, I think, but then got beaten in the playoffs by Barca Athletic. How's this season gone for them? How's it panned out for them across the 38 games, Nick?
Well, at one point we thought they were going to run away with it. I think, did he win, was it 7 games on the bounce? The Bebe effect really coming into full factor, but the wheels came off us slightly, and they drew a lot of games. They lost a fair few surprising games as well, and at one point looked like they were going to slip out of the playoffs, but they stuck with Paco Gémez. They kept the faith, and it has been rewarded with them managed to keep their playoff place, and then emphatically beating Ceuta on the last game of the season. Looks like he's managed to bring everything back on board, hasn't he? So again, it'd be interesting with Ibiza because they did run very close last season. They were very much up there with Malaga, Cordoba, chasing Castellón as well. And I think they'll be desperate to get back into Segunda too, because you can't have a squad like that they've got 2 seasons in a row and not have the success, the taste of promotion, because they've got a few key players that they managed to keep from last season, but they've added to them as well, haven't they, Liam?
Yeah, I mean, they've got an absolute massive Segunda experience, haven't they? I mean, it feels like almost ex-Malaga, doesn't it? Malaga 21-22 almost. You got Alex Gallar, who's been brilliant for them this season. 6 goals, 12 assists. So again, he's top of the assists, I think, with Luismi Gutierrez, the Antequera that we mentioned earlier on, but also Javi Jimenez and Discassi, both from Malaga. Eugeni, who was at Real Zaragoza not so long ago, Una Medina, Racing Santander, Mo Dauda, Cartagena, Tenerife, Eldense, and of course you mentioned Bebe as well, Manchester United, Benfica, Rayo Vallecano, Eibar, etc., etc. He is the biggest X factor in this whole playoff picture, isn't he? Bebe, you never know what you're going to get with him, but some of it is quite breathtaking. And he came here to the island I think, with his transfer as well, didn't he? He was at Racing Club de Ferrol at the start of the season, and then wasn't really enjoying it. So dropped down to Primera RFEF, 6 goals, 4 assists since he joined Ibiza in 16 appearances. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, this is a team laden with Segunda experience who really, really needs to get back there. And I don't know if they will. What do you think? Who do you make favourite in this one, Nick?
I can't split these two. I think this is the game that he's going to have, like you said, that X factor where I think both of these sides are just going to take lumps out of each other. I genuinely think we could finish the first leg and it'd be 5-5. Do you know what I mean? Because they've both got that goal scoring prowess. They've both got that attacking intent. You know, Paco Gemes especially is a manager who goes, well, I can concede 3 goals as long as I score 5. Do you know what I mean? Like he just goes gung ho, doesn't he? So this could end up any which way. I genuinely couldn't put my finger on this one, Liam. Could you?
Not at all. No, I don't know how to. I must admit, but no, I'm not a massive fan of either side in terms of the whole kind of dynamic around the clubs. But yeah, they are two pretty enterprising sides. I don't think this is going to end 0-0, is it, the first leg? And the second one, neither. You're right. Paco Gemes doesn't even understand the principle of 0-0, does he? He's exactly what you said. He's like, you score 3, we score 4. And I don't think Andorra with those 2 strikers are going to be kept quiet for 2 whole legs. So yeah, could be a cracking couple of legs we see between these 2 sides. I'll be honest, I'm not that fussed who wins, which is a good thing in a way, but then I never like to be that indifferent either. So I'm not really sure, but I'm sure watch both games and see what we make of them. Fourth quarter final. Features the fourth team in Grupo Dos, doesn't it? And the third team in Grupo Uno. That's Mérida in fourth in Grupo Dos versus third in Grupo Uno, which is Real Sociedad B. Tell us a bit about Mérida AD. I say that specifically because there's been some other Méridas.
Again, I don't think we can signpost this one. Obviously, who we want to win, surely from a professional capacity, Liam. To be fair, Real Sociedad B, I don't know what it is compared to the other filiales. I'm not as bothered by this one for some strange reason, so it should be quite interesting. But Mérida AD, in theory, just 12 years old. They assumed the identity of Uri Mérida a few years ago, who themselves had also taken over theie Mérida, who were founded way back in the early 20th century. They were promoted to the third tier Spanish football in the summer of 2015, and they've spent 8 years at this level, which is actually quite impressive when you come to think about it. They've obviously had a lot of success this season. Sergio Julio is a fantastic prospect, a very good young manager. And then the fact that they've just been bought out by Matthew Benham, who also owns Brentford FC, means there is a bright future in Mérida and in Extremadura as well. You know, they'll be thinking maybe we can get this first bounce into it and establish ourselves quite quickly in Segunda if we can do. It'd be very interesting if they do that though, Liam, because obviously the financial restrictions that come in with being in Segunda. Do Mérida want that right now, or do they just want to experience themselves at this in this game?
Yeah, it's really interesting that, isn't it? Because as we know, in Primera RFEF, you can really spend what you like. No one keeps an eye on what you're spending. And I'm not suggesting that Brentford would come in and spend thousands of euros on players, but certainly developing the infrastructure of the club in terms of the training facilities and everything is something that you can pretty much sign a blank check for. That if you've got the money to pay for it, then you can spend what you like. And you're quite right. When you go up to, you do get some money from the CVC arrangement, don't you? I think, is that right? They've sold their TV rights down the river for the next 50 years or something. In return, you get some money you can spend on improving the structure of your club. But yeah, there's certainly more freedom to do that sort of stuff in Primera Federación. But you wouldn't say no to the promotion, would you? And obviously, Los Romanos, as they're known, because it's a Roman city, isn't it? That's their nickname, Los Romanos. They've done really well in their home city. I think they've only lost once all season in 19 games, and they haven't been great away from home. So the story is very similar to Gimnàstic de Tarragona in Grupo Uno. But they have won a couple of games recently, albeit against some of the lesser sides. I think they won, didn't they, away at Recreativo in one of the last games of the season. So they come into these playoffs having had a couple of wins in the last 3 away games. But yeah, they're certainly much better at home. And that's why it'll be interesting to see how they get on in this first leg against Real Sociedad, because as the lower side, they will play the first leg at home. And they need to make the most of that, don't they, given that they're not great on the road?
Yeah. Look at some of those key players that Mérida have got, the likes of Lebreto Beltran, a fantastic signing from Tarazona last summer. We've already spoken about how, well Tarazona recruit and how they can lose players. This is one where Mérida have really benefited from them. 13 goals this season. Javi Eslava as well, great bit of scouting from Europa last season down in the Segunda REF. He's got 12 goals this season. And then also Carlos Doncel as well, another player sort of like edging towards his 30s. There's been a lot of ageism on this podcast today, hasn't there? But again, fantastic. season for him with 7 goals. They're an exciting team to watch, and they play a very interesting style of football under Guila, which has obviously attracted attention from the likes of Castellon and Huesca when they're looking to replace their managers. So it'd be interesting to see how they approach this playoffs. Real Sociedad B, obviously a bit of a different flavour, for being perfectly honest, Liam. We didn't want to see a Bay team in here, but we have one. So, and again, I don't really have too much to say about him, being perfectly honest.
Yeah, I mean, they have, I suppose, spent most of the 21st century at this level of Spanish football, and they were, of course, promoted to Segunda at the end of the 2021 season. And then they came straight back down 12 months later. Amusingly, always for me, I found this amusing anyways, that their coach for that one season, the 21-22 season, was Xabi Alonso. It clearly wonder what happened to him. Only went and became Bayer Leverkusen coach, and now the new Real Madrid coach. So yeah, he's not been too much affected by that relegation on his CV. Yeah, I mean, they've got some. I kind of agree with you. They do play some good football. They offend me less than some of the other B teams, but I still would be very pleased if Merida put them out. I like Mikel Gotti. I think he's great in midfield for them. Scored 13 goals in midfield for them. He's really in form recently. He's got 4 goals and a couple of assists in his last 7 games. He's a really, really good player. Interesting, he started at Athletic Club and went there for quite a number of years. I think he got as far as Bilbao Athletic, so he was quite close to the first team, but then joined Real Sociedad at the end of the 22-23 season. He's actually also played in the Copa del Rey this season, scored. He only had 20 minutes, but scored against a lower league side in that. So he's had his first team debut, as has Iñaki Ruperez. He's a very attacking fullback, and he also didn't start at Real Sociedad. He was at Osasuna as a juvenil, and then switched to Real Sociedad, and also came on and got involved in that game, that Copa del Rey game in which Gotti scored. And then Mikel Rodriguez, who also hasn't been a Real Sociedad B from the start. He was actually playing for a club called Pasaya KE in the 5th tier of Spanish football as recently as 21-22, so just 3 years ago. And now he's part of the fabric there, isn't he? He's made his way up from the youth team, started in Real Sociedad C, now playing in the B team, probably eventually going to make his way to the first team, scored 6 goals from midfield. So they've not got a striker that scores, lots of goals, but they've got a couple of midfielders who are really, really good. And even Ruperez, as I say, gets forward really well from fullback. So they've got plenty of goals on the side. So do we think there's going to be goals in these 2 legs or not?
I think there definitely will be. Like you say, again, maybe not in the same levels of what we talk about with Andorra and Ibiza, but again, these are 2 managers that like to win, and they like to win by scoring great goals as well, and getting that advantage for them. I think it'd be interesting, obviously, with Real Sociedad B. I don't know if the coach has gone yet, but obviously he's been lofted into the men's first team's position for the start of next season, but I don't know if he's around again. I was looking before on the on the internet, and it, for all intents and purposes, says that that he's gone and it's the new manager that's in charge for next season, the other one. So again, I need to get that confirmed. But again, pressure for him to come in and get this team promoted if he's only started taking over in the last few games. But it'll be interesting to see whether that one is actually out there. But I think we can both signpost ourselves here. We'd like to see Merida win this, wouldn't we?
Absolutely. And I think the great story there is you mentioned 3 crucial players, Donfel and Eslava, and also Beltran. And yeah, they are all late 20s. And I think we're not trying to be ageist about this. It's just quite remarkable they've managed to sign these 3 players who've had steady careers, but they've not done anything like what they've been doing for Merida this season. I mean, I don't think Beltran's ever scored more than 5 goals in a season, and that was nearly 10 years ago with Alcoyano. And he's got 13 goals this season. And Eslava, the same, mostly played lower level football in Catalonia, the highest he's played is Segunda RFEF. And Doncel, yeah, he's done all right. I mean, I think he was actually at Ceuta last season. So he has played in Primera RFEF, but again, hasn't scored 7 goals in a season since he was, I think, at Espanyol B back about 7 or 8 years ago, and that was the 4th tier as well. So they're real success stories, these 3, aren't they? And it's not all about those 3, but if they can turn up and produce what they've been producing for the whole season in this big pressure situation, then yeah, Merida have got a great chance. And of course, I agree with you. I'd be delighted if they put Real Sociedad B out.
Yes, definitely. And it'll be interesting. We'll obviously keep you up to date with the playoffs as they move on. And eventually, two of those teams will ascend with Ceuta and Cultural Leonesa into Segunda. However, that means we've also going to have room for some more teams joining us, Liam. So just to maybe remind people that the Segunda REF playoffs are taking place at the moment. Do you want to give us a bit of an update on what's happening in the league below? Who could be joining us next season?
Yeah, we've got 5 second legs, haven't we, taking place this coming weekend. So we will know 5 sides that are coming to join us in Primera RF by Sunday evening. Cacereño need to come back from 1-0 down against Estepona to get through there. Again, the sides that are at home, again, have this advantage. All the sides that are at home in the second leg finished higher in the league. So they just need to make sure that they don't lose the tie overall after 120 minutes, and they will go through. If it's drawn, then they will go up, basically, this situation. So Numancia and Talavera de Reina are both at home. They're playing Teruel and Torrent. Both of those games ended all square in the first game. So I think it was 0-0 Teruel, Numancia, and 1-1 Torrent, Talavera. So if those two home sides, Numancia and Talavera, both don't lose their game this weekend, they will go up. UCAM Murcia are 2-1 down against Sabadell, but again, if they win the second game 1-0, even after extra time, if that's what it takes, then they will go up. And the one game which really seems quite decided, although I shudder to say that, really, because nothing's really decided in Spanish football ever, is it? But that's Real Avilés Industrial, who are 2-0 up against Rayo Majadahonda, and the first leg was in Madrid. So basically, it means that Real Avilés at home just need to make sure they don't lose 3-0, basically, as they finished higher in the league. So they look the best bet to come and join us, and the other 4 very much still in the balance.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other one that really stands out for me is that match between Cacereño and Estepona. I don't know if you saw this, Liam, the other day, but the game got suspended twice because of fan trouble, and then ultimately got ended early. Basically, it was abandoned, and they had to finish the last 10 minutes on Monday at dinner time behind closed doors. So I'm interested to see whether the ref are maybe going to chuck the book at them for this, and maybe will this second leg be played behind closed doors at the in Cacereño. So it was a strange one to watch that.
Yeah, very strange. I mean, I'm not really sure. I think probably the amount of time they've already sold tickets for the second game, so presumably they're going to get away with it. But yeah, there were certainly some incidents, weren't they, involving I think both sets of fans, and bizarre to bring them all back on a Monday morning to play 10 minutes, as you say, behind closed doors. But I think the second game will have fans, but I'm sure it'll be very heavily policed after the nonsense that went on in the first game. Great shame, and let's hope that the action on the field takes centre stage this weekend rather than a repeat of what's happened in Estepona last weekend.
Absolutely. And we'll be sure to keep you up to date with those movements next weekend as well. Obviously, there's no Primera RF football apart from the playoffs, so we'll keep you across all the playoff fixtures when we go through there. From yourself, Liam, as well, obviously there was one final weekend of the regular Spanish Segunda season left. Have you got any recommendations for games people need to go and watch there?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom 4 is decided, so it's all about the top. The big game at the top is between Racing de Santander and Granada. Granada 3 points behind Racing de Santander, but they have the goal average, so they go to Santander knowing that if they beat Racing, they will be in the playoffs. They will finish above them on goal average. So that will be the game of the weekend in Segunda, and then we'll go into the playoffs there as well. But yes, that's the undoubted standout fixture this weekend.
Who do you think is going to get in?
I don't know. I think psychologically, Racing Santander are not in a good place at the moment. Then they have to remember that last year they blew it on the final day of the season. So I have a sneaky feeling Granada might break their hearts for the second season running. It was Villarreal Bay last season they broke their hearts. But I hope not, because Racing are a great club and great fans. So fingers crossed they get it done.
Yes, absolutely. And as I mentioned, we'll keep you up to date and across all the Primera RF promotion playoffs. Like I say, that starts this weekend on Saturday afternoon. So I'll say thank you to you guys at home for joining us once again. Thank you for joining us on the live stream on Saturday as well. It was absolutely brilliant. Thank you to you, Liam, for joining me once again to talk about the third tier of Spanish football.
Yeah, we thought it was going to be a bit shorter tonight, didn't we? So apologies that we've gone on a bit, but we just felt like going into these games, we wanted to give you a really good, feel for what the teams are all about and how they've gone so far this season if you haven't been following the league all season. So I hope you haven't been too put out by the extra length, and we can promise you it won't be this long next week, because we're just going to be talking about the 4 games next week.
Absolutely. What is an extra 10 minutes when you're with friends, so to speak? But yes, thank you for sticking with us at home. It's been absolutely brilliant. We'll catch you again next week to bring you that update on the players, as we mentioned. So for now, I'll say thank you and goodbye.
Hasta la próxima.